Ladies and gents, boys and girls, welcome. Thursday, September the 28th, 2023. Hope you're all doing well. Chris Phillips here, your host of the Daily Crow of the Spurs Up Show. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. I see Rebecca, John, Edward, Jacob, Bodaddy, Ethan, Travi as well. Also, those in the Big Cock Club Discord, head over to the TDC Questions channel. The TDC Questions channel, be sure questions are answered there, guys. Again, we have got a lot to get into, a lot to discuss. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. A jam-packed show, guys. Really quickly, though, we are calling an audible here on this Thursday. We have no Mark Ryan on the show today. Our good friend Mark Ryan of the Fan Upstate has called out sick. So, keep him in your thoughts, your prayers. We hope that Mark Ryan is doing well. And so today is going to be a really quick blitz of a show, a power hour, if you will, as we talk all things South Carolina, Tennessee, guys. Also, it's Prediction Thursday. In case you missed this, I'm now locking in predictions for South Carolina and the entire SEC on Thursdays instead of Friday. So be sure to adjust accordingly. Going to be a lot of fun, guys. And, of course, Friday, tomorrow, our mailbag episode, our mailbag show will take place where we will take your questions, your comments, your calls in the first hour. Really good stuff, guys. Again, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. Do not forget the TSUS A1 Air Quality Consultants post-game call-in show will take place immediately following Saturday night's game. We'll take your questions, comments, your calls as we live react to everything that takes place under the lights at Neyland Stadium. Really excited for that, guys, and looking forward to hearing from you all. Also, do not forget, guys, tsus.store, the best Gamecocks merchandise on the internet. Check out latest drops, new drops. You see it's hoodie season. I'm back in a hoodie now, if you will. Y'all be sure to check that out. On a Prediction Thursday, I see that some of you are on edge. Some of you are excited to chat. I know that I messed up our post on social media when I put that the game was tomorrow. The game is indeed not tomorrow. The game is on Saturday, in case you guys did not realize. Either way, though, really excited to chat with you all, explain everything, dive into everything. Looking forward to a great conversation here on today's show. Again, guys, like I mentioned, no Mark Ryan today. He may actually join us tomorrow, though, so we may double up on our special guest. We have Jake Crane tomorrow. We may also have Mark Ryan. If not, no biggie, but a shortened 1 hour show today due to the fact that there is no Mark Ryan. That being said, guys, let's go ahead and get into it. Gamecocks and Volunteers do battle under the lights at Neyland Stadium. Our top storylines for South Carolina, Tennessee, a 7:30 kickoff on the SEC network. And we start, guys, simply put, call this game the rematch. Gamecocks and Vols. Ever since the clocks hit zero at Williams-Brice Stadium and you and I and many others rushed the field at Willie B, Tennessee fans have been looking forward to this one. I mean, we've literally been talking about this since early January, that Vol fans were coming for blood. The revenge factor. Winning by 50 is not enough. You know, we've heard the chatter of Josh Heupel and Shane Beamer and the feelings these two coaches have for each other, especially on the Tennessee side of things. You take it back to SEC media days, guys. When we heard from Tennessee folks that if there's one coach that Josh Heupel wants to beat this year, it's Shane Beamer. If there's one team he wants to beat this year, it's South Carolina. You think about the mood of this Volunteer fan base. And, you know, what's interesting, too, is we talk about the rematch. The way that South Carolina, Tennessee has truly evolved into a really, really fun rivalry, right? It's turned into a really fun rivalry because these two fan bases, these two teams, these two programs cannot stand each other. Go to Vol Twitter or Gamecock Twitter for 5 minutes, and you will know exactly what I'm talking about. The emotion, The energy, right? When it's Gamecocks in Tennessee, like, you don't need the extra storylines. The blood's pumping in this one. Like, the energy is there. But last year added that extra bit of juice, if you will. Tennessee coming into Willie B, 3 touchdown plus favorites, and the Gamecocks doing the unthinkable. Tennessee has been licking their chops for revenge since that game took place last November. Does it play a factor in this game? Is it just something for the fans? Does it mean anything when we're talking about the play on the field when these two teams square off? Can South Carolina, believe it or not, use it against Tennessee? Because the way I view Tennessee, guys, this is a fragile fan base and a fragile football program. Sitting at 2-1 right now, 3-1, I should say. This is a fragile fan base and a fragile football program. Already lost to Florida earlier in this season. A loss to the Gamecocks, and you're going to watch those in orange and white crumble. Now, on the flip side, a game like this can galvanize said fan base and program. You go out, play your best ball, put it all together in front of the home crowd, and all of a sudden, Tennessee's back on track for a 9 or maybe even 10-win season. But I think South Carolina can use this whole revenge factor and the mood of the Tennessee fan base to their advantage. You go out and punch the Vols in the mouth early. Get up 7-0, 14-0. All of a sudden, you hear whispers for Nico. All of a sudden, you hear whispers of, oh, man, maybe Josh Heupel's not the guy. Maybe we're not back like we thought. I think the Gamecocks can use that, the emotions of this game, to their advantage. The Vols are not careful on Saturday night. Now, when we move on the field, talking specifically on the field, the best quarterback and wide receiver duo in college football look to do it yet again. Spencer Rattler, Xavier Legette. It feels like we all keep waiting for these guys to show that they are human, right? And to be fair, I think Georgia did a good job of limiting Xavier Legette and what he was able to do in that football game, and there's been no defense that's held the Gamecocks down like what Georgia did, I think, at Sanford Stadium, which will make sense, right? One of the best defenses in all of college football. But this is a favorable matchup, right? Spencer Rattler going back up against Tennessee. Who can forget what happened last year? Him throwing for over 400 yards in this football game. 6 touchdown passes against Tim Banks and that Vol defense. Just shredding Tennessee's secondary. What does he do for an encore? Ironically enough, Xavier Legette was not a huge factor in that game last year, guys. It was a lot of Juice Wells, a lot of Jalen Brooks, a lot of Josh Vann, some Jaheim Bell, some Juju McDowell, even some Takarion Joyner. Wasn't a lot of Xavier Legette, though. And you know that he is antsy at the opportunity, looking at that Vols secondary and the way that the passing game has worked against the Volunteers, especially with what the Gamecocks did last year. And you wonder, too, how much of the game plan from last year comes into this one. Either way, though, when you got a quarterback like Spencer Rattler playing the way that he is, and you got a weapon on the outside like a Xavier Legette, that is a great place to start in a ball game that I think most of us expect to be a high-scoring, back-and-forth affair. So can Spencer Rattler and Xavier Legette keep up their hot play? Because the Gamecocks, guys, it goes without saying, they have to have them and have them playing at just as high a level, if not even a higher level than what we've seen to this point, if South Carolina is going to go in and pull the upset. Now, we've talked a lot about balance, playing complementary football. Mario Anderson looks to build off of his breakout performance against Mississippi State. And I know some will scoff and laugh and say, Chris, he didn't even rush for 100 yards. He didn't even hit 4 yards per carry. But, guys, when you look at the Gamecocks rushing attack and the struggles they had at that point, what Mario Anderson did should be applauded. There's no debate who should get the bulk of the carries. There's no debate who should be RB1 going in this game. I am very anxious to see, does South Carolina do the obvious? Do they make Mario Anderson RB1? Do they give him 20-plus carries and give him the majority of the carries at minimum between the 20s? Because Shane Beamer's comments saying that Montario Hardesty has the call, they didn't exactly make me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. I don't know about you guys. Either way, though, Mario Anderson going up against the Vols defense that we've heard all about the front seven, how improved they are this season. And the numbers would reflect that, right? Their front seven has done a great job not just getting after the quarterback, but slowing down the running game as well. But we saw Florida have massive success against Tennessee rushing the football. Be the more physical team up front. And when you've got a physical player like a Mario Anderson, it's not about popping off 75-yard touchdown runs, guys. It's not about, because make no mistake, this is not going to turn into a run-first offense overnight. I don't think it's going to turn into a run-first offense at any point this season. But you can't overstate how great of an advantage it is having a guy like Mario Anderson, who can grind out tough yards, give you 4 or 5 yards a pop, even just 3 or 4, just to give that semblance of balance so that your offensive attack can operate. What does Mario Anderson do for an encore? And does he continue to grow into and flourish in the role that is RB1? We've talked a lot about it, guys, this week. Who steps up offensively? Who else, I should say? Because South Carolina is not just going to win this football game with Spencer Rattler and Xavier Legette. Somebody else has got to be that guy. We just mentioned Mario Anderson at the running back position. But specifically talking tight ends, other wide receivers. Because you got to think Tim Banks in Tennessee, they're going to look at South Carolina and say, okay, we got to double 17. Like, we got to take 17 away as much as possible. Make Spencer Rattler go to somebody else to beat us. The question is, who is that somebody else? Is it Trey Knox? Does he build off of, by far, his best game in Garnet and Black that he had against Mississippi State? Is it an Eddie Lewis? Is it an Amarian Brown? Is it a Nick Harbor who finally breaks out? Is it an Omega Blake who's been really good for South Carolina? Is it a youngster like Tyshawn Russell? This is a game in which South Carolina is going to have to score and score often. And so it's going to take more than just 1 or 2 guys to walk into Neyland Stadium at night and win this football game. You know Spencer Rattler is going to be there. You know Xavier Legette's going to be there. But who's going to be the other guy? Who's going to be the other playmaker that steps up? Because you're not beating Tennessee with just 1 or 2 guys. It's got to be a complete team effort on the offensive side of the football. And I know last week was a great step in the right direction, but you've got to continue to disperse the football and get more playmakers involved. Because at some point, and maybe it's this weekend, maybe it's not, but at some point a defense is going to make it a priority to take 17 away. Who do you go to when that happens? It all starts up front, guys, both offensively and defensively, sticking with the Gamecocks offensive front. As I've mentioned to you all before, the youth movement on the offensive line was absolutely the right play by Shane Beamer and Lonnie Teasley, and it's paid off major dividends, right? We've already seen Big Tree Babalade come into his own on the left side of that offensive line. Trovon Bowe has played meaningful snaps and played well. And South Carolina has just completely revamped their offensive line from what we saw early in the season. Well, this group faces their stiffest test yet. Because while I also called for the youth movement up front, I also told you guys this. Playing freshmen on the offensive line in the SEC typically is not a recipe for success. And it can backfire on you in a hurry, especially when you're going up against a pass rush like Tennessee presents and you're at that place at night dealing with the crowd and a hostile environment. Now, I know this team has played in Sanford Stadium. I totally get that. This team has been in big-time atmospheres and been on the road before, but I think we can all admit what they're going to experience Saturday night under the lights at Neyland is going to be a different environment and a different atmosphere. Tennessee, one of the best in college football, getting after the quarterback. South Carolina has struggled to protect Spencer Rattler. Guys, even in last week's win, Mississippi State got to QB1 4 times. As I've mentioned many times, and I'll say it again, the only thing that can knock Spencer Rattler out his groove and out this zone that he's in is if he's under constant pressure, as if he's under constant duress. South Carolina has to make sure that they are keeping QB1 upright. Something else, guys, I didn't even have in my notes, but just came to my mind. I think a big storyline in this one, speaking of QB1, speaking of the offensive line, because I think Spencer Rattler over the last couple of weeks, something we've seen, we all knew what he was capable of, throwing the football, right? Downfield passing game, that is his strength, that's his forte. But the way Spencer Rattler has been using his legs, to me, has been really impressive. I don't think anybody would sit here and say that Spencer Rattler is fast by any means, or he's a burner or blazer, what have you, but he's quick enough. He's got enough wiggle in the pocket to get outside the pocket. When he gets outside the pocket, he's a guy, he doesn't run to run, he runs to throw. What I mean by that, he keeps his eyes downfield as he's on the run, and we've all seen him, guys, deliver strikes. He's great throwing the football on the run. But, guys, even just last week, we saw a designed keeper for Spencer Rattler. Now, you want to limit those play calls because you don't want to put QB1 in harm's way, obviously. But I think what's not being talked about enough is the way that Spencer Rattler has been using his legs. How he's been using his legs to get South Carolina maybe out of some bad situations. Get that key first down on a 3rd and long. And, guys, we all know, we've seen it before. It is demoralizing to a defense when you are able to get outside the pocket, nothing's there, scramble, and get the first down anyways. Spencer Rattler has done such a great job of that. And that's how you know, too, this is a guy playing in full control. The game is slowed down for him. It's slowing down. He's seeing the entire field. He's seeing what's there. He's not making an unnecessary throw. He's not throwing South Carolina into trouble. If it's not there, he's taking what he can get. And so, again, in a game in which, I think Tennessee's going to be aggressive. I think they're going to send pressure. If Spencer Rattler is able to beat them with his legs, all of a sudden, you bring a brand new dynamic in this football game and something that Tennessee has to account for. Guys, as we move to the other side of the football, the question is first this. What's the status of Joe Milton? And sticking with that, is it fair to call this a make-or-break game for his future under center in Knoxville? We've heard about Joe Milton took a hit in the UTSA game, I think on the knee or the leg, what have you. We actually talked to our Tennessee guys this week and asked about Joe Milton. He said, Chris, I expect him to play, but with Josh Heupel, you just never know. And there's been some gamesmanship from Heupel about, hey, is Joe Milton 100%? He's going to play. He said, I expect him to play well. He didn't give credence to whether he was 100% or whether the injury's still lingering. He said, I just expect him to play well. So what is the status of Joe Milton? This is a guy we saw reel off an 81-yard touchdown run to open the game against UTSA. Is his running ability limited because of that? Do we see him hobbling around, right? Nobody's 100% right now, don't get me wrong, but is it something where it's a significant injury? And he's not quite the guy that he's been to this point. And then also for Joe Milton, because the guy that he's been to this point, here's the thing. You look at Joe Milton's numbers, guys. He's been solid. I mean, Joe Milton hasn't been bad. He didn't lose them the Florida game, but he's not making the plays that Hendon Hooker made. And that's why Tennessee fans are so up in arms and are so upset. He's not making those plays, right? There's been some big-time misses on downfield shots and plays that, again, Tennessee last year would have made. If things go south, especially early for Joe Milton, we see the South Carolina secondary get an interception or two off of him. Does a Tennessee crowd that was once so focused on beating the Gamecocks and getting revenge, do they all of a sudden turn their attention, their vitriol, and their anger, their angst to Joe Milton, to Josh Heupel, and the quarterback situation? As we spoke on earlier, guys, I think it's a very fragile fan base where if things go south early, this thing could spiral the other way, and the Gamecocks could take advantage. But again, for Joe Milton, huge game. What's his status? What's the health of the Vols QB1? And if things do go south early, is Joe Milton going to be able to bounce back and combat that and maybe fight even some of the boo birds that might come out at Neyland Stadium? Guys, sticking defensively, can an improved front seven slow down the Vols ground game? Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, Dylan Sampson, the three-headed monster back there for Tennessee. And again, guys, we've talked all week. They love to run the football. Make no mistake. Tennessee loves to run the football. When we talk about getting Tennessee, quote-unquote, off schedule, how do you do that? You stop the run in the early downs. Because when Tennessee's offense is clicking, when Tennessee's offense is operating like a well-oiled machine, they're getting 6 or 7 yards a pop on first down, guys. We saw it at times last year because, Tennessee scored 38 points, right? They were going up and down the field as well. And when they get 6 or 7 yards a pop and they got that up-tempo going, and that offense is really, really hard to stop, especially once your defense gets gassed and your defense gets on their heels. And if Tennessee can run the football, South Carolina has no chance. That front seven, I think, guys, over the last couple of weeks has taken some steps forward. There have been some really encouraging signs from that front seven. Last week, obviously, a historical night for Will Rogers, and we'll get to the secondary in just a second. But, guys, if you would have told me right now that South Carolina was going to be top half of the SEC in rushing defense, I would have thought the Gamecocks were easily 3-1, or probably primed to go win 8 or 9 games. So it's nice to see South Carolina be able to slow down a rushing attack. It's nice to see South Carolina be able to get a push up front. And it's simply put, guys, it's just some guys that we've talked about a lot are finally coming into their own. Guys like TJ Sanders, Alex Huntley playing the best ball of his career, Tonka Hemingway being himself, Jordan Strawn finally coming back into form last week. And you slowed down Woody Marks, but the challenge is even greater this week with that three-headed monster, and Tennessee is going to want to establish the running game early. Also, at the linebacker position, you need the best from Debo Williams, Stone Blanton, Bam Martin Scott, and yes, even Grayson Puff Howard in this football game. You've got to find ways to slow down the Vols ground game. Now, as I mentioned, the secondary. Simply put, guys, what adjustments does South Carolina make in that regard? Because that Josh Heupel, Joe Milton, Brew McCoy, Squirrel White, Ramel Keaton, that entire offense, they're licking their chops, man, after what they saw this week on film. They are licking their chops after what they saw happen to South Carolina, what Will Rogers and Mississippi State did. And no, Joe Milton is no Will Rogers, make no mistake. But if those opportunities are there, guys, if they're there often enough, Tennessee's probably going to cash in a couple times. What adjustments are there? You obviously cannot let Tennessee exploit mismatches the way Mississippi State did. And I don't know, guys, that Tennessee really has a Tulu Griffin on their roster, right? Brew McCoy's a solid player. Ramel Keaton's a solid player. Squirrel White, solid. So, they've got solid guys. I don't think they have a Jalen Hyatt like they had last year, who, again, was a historical player. Those 5 touchdown catches against Alabama, absolutely absurd. But do we see South Carolina secondary have a bounce-back game, or is this something that it's going to be a problem and South Carolina has to deal with? Big opportunity for guys like Marcellus Diallo, Donnell Fortune. Nicky Manwari's got to have a better game, right? We talked about the matchup between he and Joe Milton. He's got to play better. Bottom line, there can't be miscommunication because this is a very similar situation, right? Tennessee runs the football more effectively than Mississippi State did. Look at the numbers. They back that up. Tennessee runs the football more effectively. And South Carolina went in that game last week. Okay, let's sell out on the run. Let's creep up. Let's cheat. And then you got beat over the top. You cannot make that mistake again. The Gamecocks have got to be able to slow down the rushing attack with that front seven and let the secondary work. Because if your safeties are cheating up, You're playing cover 0. You're playing cover 1. Tennessee's going to have a freaking field day, man. They're going to do everything they can to exploit that and beat you over the top. Joe Milton, we've all heard about the arm strength, and we're tired of hearing it, but you simply cannot get into a position where they're getting favorable matchups on the outside because Joe Milton does have the arm strength to make you pay. Guys, we talked about this last week. Beamer ball. It's in a bit of a funk right now, right? Failed 2-point conversion last week, had the procedure penalty on the field goal. Nothing really notable at this point from Kai Kroger. Mitch Jeter's been solid. He had that one miss, but overall has been good for you. But we still just have not seen Beamer ball make the big plays that we were so accustomed to seeing over the first 2 years of the Shane Beamer era. And you think about what the recipe is. This isn't Georgia, right, guys? South Carolina's not a 4-touchdown underdog. It's not like some insurmountable thing where the stars have to align to pull an upset. But when you talk about going on the road at night in the SEC as a double-digit underdog, if you want to pull the upset, hey, one of the great ways to do so, guys, and maybe make up for it in a game that, maybe Tennessee's more talented than you. Maybe they're a little bit better than you across the board. You know how you can negate that? Big play on special teams. A blocked punt. A blocked field goal. Whatever it might be. A kickoff return. Whatever it is. We just have not seen that to this point. And you know that Tennessee is going to make it a priority, right? They're pretty good at special teams on their own front. They got some lethal return guys. They can beat you in special teams also. That is a facet of the game, I think, for South Carolina to go into Neyland and pull this upset. They've got to win in the special teams department. South Carolina has got to find ways, creative ways, whether it's fakes, whether it's, and be strategic with it, right? Don't just go for 2 to do it. Don't go for 2 in situations that it doesn't make sense, but being able to utilize special teams, winning that facet of the ball game to make up some ground, right? Most times you only need to win 2 of 3 facets to win a football game. You win the special teams facet, you go ahead and steal that one. Well, it's going to make your path to an upset on the road in the SEC much, much easier. I think South Carolina has to have Beamer ball on Saturday night. I've mentioned it many times, guys. As you can tell, it's a factor for me. The hostile road crowd playing at Neyland on the road at night, all black jerseys, Tennessee fans coming for blood. Listen, I'm not trying to make this more of a thing than it is. But all of the reasons that I felt good about South Carolina last week, you're at home at night, the crowd's behind you, good things will happen, this crowd will will you to a victory. All of those things are now going against South Carolina. And in a lot of these 50-50 SEC matchups, guys, that's how I look at this game. 50-50 matchup. No matter what Vegas says, I see this as a toss-up. In these 50-50 games, that home field advantage and being under the lights, it can make all the difference. To win on the road in the SEC in a hostile environment, guys, you can't just play well. You've got to take it a step further. Like, you've got to play that much better on the road to win a game like this. Tennessee, it will not be a comedy of errors. The Gamecocks are going to get Tennessee's best shot. Make no mistake. South Carolina can very well win this football game, but it won't be because Tennessee went out there and pissed down their leg. It won't be because Tennessee went out there and vomited on themselves. It'll be because the Gamecocks went out there and won the football game. They snatched victory from Josh Heupel, Joe Milton, and that Tennessee crowd. Because at home, at night, in Neyland, you can bet your ass you're going to get the best version of Tennessee. That's not to say it can't be done, but that's what South Carolina has to overcome. And finally, guys, on that note, this is an opportunity of epic proportions for South Carolina, guys, and a huge game, not just for this season, but I think this program moving forward as well, guys. You talk to any Gamecock fan, and I think fans in every fan base feel this way, that their team is is hated or disrespected or we get no love nationally, what have you. Guys, you want to get love nationally? You want to see South Carolina start to get the accolades and the preseason hype and the preseason buzz like a Tennessee got over the last couple of years? Go out and beat them. Go out and beat them. Put together a winning streak. And oh, by the way, we all know it's the last time these two teams will play for the foreseeable future because of the scheduling changes, the expansion with Texas and Oklahoma, right? There will be no South Carolina-Tennessee game in 2024. So this might be your last shot for a little bit. Fairly or unfairly, guys, because many will look at the series record. The overall record, Tennessee has dominated. But you look since 2010, this thing is dead even. I can make a very strong argument that in modern college football, Tennessee's not a better program than South Carolina. But fairly or unfairly, history matters. Tradition matters. Brand matters. And so in this series, here's how it works. Carolina has to string together 2 or 3 or 4 in a row for people to say, you know what? South Carolina has passed Tennessee as a football program. They've officially done it. And that's what the Gamecocks did back when Steve Spurrier was the head coach. But for Tennessee, guys, all they've got to do is beat South Carolina one time. God forbid they make it back-to-back. Because in people's minds, again, fairly or unfairly, don't shoot the messenger, but in people's minds from the national perspective, well, of course Tennessee's a better program than South Carolina. Tennessee's won the SEC before. Tennessee's won a national title. Doesn't matter when it happened. The fact of the matter is it happened. Tennessee used to dominate South Carolina. Like, of course Tennessee's a better program. Shane Beamer is fighting a battle every single day to change the culture, to change the perception of his program. And it can't be overstated how far a win in Knoxville would go when it feels like the chips are stacked against you. You're a double-digit dog. People are expecting Tennessee. This Tennessee football is back. They're going to get their revenge on the Gamecocks. South Carolina goes into Neyland, shocks the balls, and all of a sudden, Gamecocks football can reclaim their status of being ahead of Tennessee as a football program. Guys, that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our first break of the day. On the other side, I'm talking my prediction. South Carolina, Tennessee, all that and more on a jam-packed Thursday show. Guys, you're tuned in to The Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Thursday, September the 28th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Like I mentioned, no Mark Ryan today. He is out. He is sick. So be sure to keep Mark Ryan in your prayers, your thoughts, what have you. There is a chance we may have Mark on the show tomorrow. We may double dip with the guests. So just stay tuned for that. Of course, tomorrow also we'll have your Friday mailbag, taking your questions, your comments, your calls in our first hour. But shortened show today due to Mark Ryan's absence, but still a jam-packed show as we keep things rolling. Guys, do not forget, of course, Prediction Thursdays are now a thing. You don't have to wait till Friday to hear my thoughts on these games. We will lock in all predictions every single Thursday. So with that being said, guys, Gamecocks and Volunteers do battle Saturday night under the lights at Neyland Stadium. And Carolina enters this one, would we say, with supreme confidence after what happened last year? You know, I take myself back. That was a game in which, most notably, I gave South Carolina no chance, right? I'll never forget, I picked the Gamecocks to lose 59-13. Went as far as to go on record and say Tennessee is going to bend South Carolina over and do whatever they want to do with them for 60 minutes. The rest is history. The Gamecocks did the unthinkable. Spencer Rattler had the game of his career We rushed the field at Williams-Brice Stadium. A night none of us will never forget, a night that's literally enshrined in our studio. And now South Carolina looks to take that positive mojo into Knoxville. On the Tennessee side of things, it's interesting that, a game, the way this one's been talked about all offseason, man, about revenge and exacting revenge. And South Carolina, some Tennessee fans think that the Gamecocks hurt Hendon Hooker. And, of course, Carolina kept Tennessee out of the college football playoff and their rightful spot and a chance to punch their ticket to the playoff and win a national championship with the best team they had in over 20 years. And this one's been circled. Yes, this one has been circled for quite some time by the faithful of the orange and white. Tennessee's a mystery to me, guys, right now. I mean, you look at their schedule, you look at the way they fared this year. 3-1. Their loss, an ugly loss in Gainesville to the Florida Gators, 29-16, a game that I believe was 29-7 at half. And so the one time that Tennessee has come into a game this season with any kind of pressure, they've crumbled. And pressure can go one of two ways. Pressure can either make diamonds or pressure can make rubble. And so far this season, Tennessee is 0 for 1. They turned to dust in Gainesville in a game that most all of us thought, okay, the Vols are finally going to get that gator-sized monkey off their back, right? Destroy this hex that's over them in Gainesville and finally win against the Gators in the Swamp. Nope. Another year denied. On the South Carolina side, this is a football team, obviously, that since week one has made great strides. I mean, it has been a typical roller coaster of emotions that we are so accustomed to when it comes to being a Gamecocks football fan, right? From week one, feeling like South Carolina was doomed to go 4-8 or 5-7 to last week, South Carolina finding a way to get a big win over Mississippi State and thinking that 7 or 8 wins is back into the picture. There's some of you out there who are even bold enough to still dream of a 9-win season. And if that's going to happen, folks, this is a game that you have to have. Spencer Rattler, Xavier Legette, that Gamecocks offense are licking their chops ready to go, man. I mean, the way that Spencer Rattler's playing right now, and you think about it, guys, he went in that Tennessee game last year not playing well, not, dare I say, all that confident because of what had happened on the field. Went up against the Vols and did what he did. Now you've got a locked-in Spencer Rattler in the zone, taking on a very gettable Tennessee secondary. They've made improvements since last year, but it's still a problem area, I would say, for the Vols. On the other side, Josh Heupel, Joe Milton, huge game for him. Can South Carolina secondary bounce back from a really ugly performance against Mississippi State? And I'll say this too, guys, about South Carolina, because to be fair, I mentioned we don't know a lot about Tennessee. We're also still learning, though, about South Carolina. Are we not? Because the Gamecocks are 2-2 right now. One of those 2 wins is against Furman. Throw it out. The other one against Mississippi State, who I think most would agree is a bottom-of-the-barrel SEC team this year. Just call it for what it is. Sure, the Gamecocks showed encouraging signs in a loss at Georgia. But was that a one-off? Is South Carolina more of that team we saw in the first half or the one in the second half outscored 21-0? This is a fascinating matchup on Saturday night, right? Because you've got Tennessee with all of this manufactured pressure, some fans uneasy about their quarterback. Things aren't quite clicking offensively like they did last year. And then defensively, I mean, Tennessee's racked up really nice numbers, but the one game that they played against, dare I say, competent competition, against SEC competition, Florida bulldozed them. Florida ran right over them. With Trevor Etienne, he had a banner night, paved the way to a big victory. You know, guys, it's not as simple as, well, this team's the home team. They have the advantage. Pick them to get the W. But when you talk about going on the road in the SEC and the challenges of it, I spent a large portion of last week telling you all, hey, this is a 50-50 type of game. Many of you thought I was just, pumping up Mississippi State unnecessarily or giving them too much credit or what have you. And I think after that game, folks left with a lot more respect for Zach Arnett and the Bulldogs than they once had. But what made the difference in that ball game last week? Yes, Spencer Rattler. Yes, Xavier Legette. Yes, an opportunistic defense that finally made some plays down the stretch. But being at home under the lights at Williams-Brice Stadium, and those of you who are there, you can speak to it, you can attest to it. And it had this feeling that, like, even when the game was tied, 27-27, I felt like South Carolina's going to find a way. They're at home. They've got their crowd behind them. They've got that environment. Now, this hostile road environment can be overcome. If South Carolina is able to go out there, throw a jab, throw a punch early, silence the crowd, keep them out of it as much as possible. Because the reality is this. You're bringing a young, still inexperienced offensive line. You've still got some questions in your running game. Can Mario Anderson follow up what he did last week? We shall see. Can Spencer Rattler continue to play at the level that he's been playing at? I mean, I think if he's kept upright, Tennessee one of the best in college football getting after the quarterback. And I'll say this because many want to dismiss that, but I didn't hear folks dismissing the statistics that Georgia couldn't get after the quarterback against lesser than competition. Everybody wanted to point that out and say, well, this is why. Well, give Tennessee their just due. Give them their credit. Sure, they've played lesser competition and they've feasted on it. They've gotten after the quarterback at every turn. Huge key in this game to keep QB1 upright. And on the defensive side, I expect Joe Milton, Tennessee, that Josh Heupel attack to be aggressive all night long, man. This will be a great barometer. This will be a great test to tell us, okay, has the rushing defense actually improved? And if it has, how much? Because Tennessee is going to run the football. It's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. To get on schedule and get their offense clicking at peak optimal capacity, they're going to run the football. That being said, this is much more, guys, of a toss-up game in my mind right now than I gave it credit for over the summer. Because admittedly, you guys might recall, I listed my wins, toss-ups, and losses. And I put this game in the toss-up category, justifiably so. After what South Carolina did to Tennessee last year, after they were given no chance by everyone, including yours truly, I mean, it only felt right. It was only fair to say, hey, you never know. This is a toss-up game. But admittedly, at that point, I went on record and said, of all the toss-up games, that was the game I felt least confident in South Carolina winning because of the revenge factor, because of the simple fact that if there's one game all season long that Tennessee shows up and plays their best, it's going to be this one against the Gamecocks. And I cringed when I saw the kickoff time. I did. Would I feel better about South Carolina's chances if this game was at noon? You bet your ass I would. You bet your ass I would. Abso-freaking-lutely. Because with all due respect to Sanford Stadium, it's a loud environment, it's raucous. Neyland Stadium at night is going to hit different, guys. As I told you earlier in the week, over 61, easiest bet of the weekend. This is going to be points, and more points. I don't trust that South Carolina defensively can really stop anybody. I'm still kind of Keeping a close eye on that rushing defense. Is that rushing defense actually that much improved? Will they be able to do it on a week-in, week-out basis? And then you know that Josh Heupel and company, offense wasn't their problem last year. They scored 38 on South Carolina. So you know they're going to have it dialed up. South Carolina just has to hope and to make sure, but also keep your fingers crossed that Joe Milton and company aren't hitting these deep shots. They're not hitting these home runs because they're going to go for them, and I bet you they're going to be there sometimes. They're probably going to be there more often than not. Is South Carolina's secondary as bad as what we saw last weekend against Mississippi State? I don't think so. But this is going to be yet another stern test for a secondary that's trying to figure it out. I think you're going to see these two teams trade blows. I think Spencer Rattler is going to continue his high level of play. I think he's here to stay, guys. I think this is the Spencer Rattler you're going to get all year. I'm not saying he's going to go 18 for 20 or 25 for 27, but obviously Spencer Rattler has taken major steps forward in this game in regards to, eliminating some of those bad mistakes he made last year, eliminating those turnovers, raising his floor, if you will, to just being a better overall decision maker, taking care of the football. Is South Carolina able to get that same running game going with Mario Anderson that assisted them to such a high degree against Mississippi State? Every other game this season, South Carolina has not been able to run the football. If you're able to have some semblance of balance, now you know who your RB1 is. It's a whole new dynamic, and it opens things up for your offense. That being said, I think there's a lot of points in this football game. I think both quarterbacks play well. I think South Carolina gives a valiant effort on the road. This is not going to be the 50-point blowout that Tennessee fans want. This is not going to be the drubbing that Vol Nation is hoping for. I think South Carolina, I think Shane Beamer and company are eager at the opportunity to go in an Eland and spoil the night for the orange and white. With that being said, all of the reasons that I felt confident about South Carolina finding a way to win last week in regards to the environment, the crowd, capitalizing on that positive momentum that having your fan base behind you provides, South Carolina now has to combat and overcome all of those things. They got to play that much better to win this football game. I think it's a back-and-forth contest with Tennessee. I do think Tennessee's able to hit a couple of home runs in the passing game. I think South Carolina will struggle somewhat to stop the run. Again, I think it's back and forth. I think these teams are trading blows, similar to what you saw with Spencer Rattler and Will Rogers. The Gamecocks are going to have to outscore people to win, guys. And you got to hope that you win the turnover battle on the road as well. But isn't it interesting how when you're on the road or when you have the home field advantage, things can go sideways and mistakes can compound themselves? Unfortunately, I think we see that happen for South Carolina. I think the Tennessee pass rush is able to give Spencer Rattler some headaches. I would not be surprised if he throws a couple of interceptions in this game, a couple of turnovers. I would not be surprised to see an uncharacteristic performance from the Gamecocks to what we've seen to this point because of the environment at Neyland. And my stance on this game, guys, it hasn't changed all that much in the summer. Has Tennessee looked great at this point? No, they have not. Is Tennessee going to meet their preseason expectations? Is Tennessee football back? I have no idea. But if there's one game that Tennessee is going to show up and put it all together, it's this one. I think you're going to see Tennessee play their best football game. This game can be won by South Carolina, but it's going to have to be won. It's going to have to be taken because Tennessee is going to show up. You're going to get the Vols' best shot, and I think the Vols' best shot is enough in this football game. Lock me in. I've got the Volunteers winning this one. Tennessee 45, South Carolina 31. in a really fun back and forth offensive ball game. I think it all comes together for Tennessee. I think they take advantage of a really porous South Carolina secondary at this point. I think the Gamecocks defense has problems. I think they have issues. And so it'll be a fun back and forth shootout for a while. But I think Tennessee, riding the momentum of the home crowd, I think they force a turnover or two off South Carolina. I think we see some uncharacteristic things from the Gamecocks. I think that Tennessee front seven is going to be active all night. They make a few more plays than the Gamecocks do, ride the home crowd momentum, and get the win over Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks. 45-31. Vols get the W. Guys, being said, let's jump into another break. On the other side, we'll close out the show in style talking my SEC Pick'em, picking all the games this upcoming weekend, guys. All that and more on the side of this break. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Watch your Dougie, ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Thursday, September the 28th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. As I mentioned before, no Mark Ryan today. He may join us tomorrow. He is out today with an illness. So keep Mark Ryan in your thoughts and prayers. But no Mark Ryan today. We will have Jake Crane tomorrow. We'll have our Friday Q&A, mailbag, all that good stuff to kick off the show in the first hour. And then, of course, we'll have Jake Crane. We may have Mark Ryan immediately after him, doubling up on guests. We'll just have to see if Mark Ryan is feeling up to it. But either way, as I mentioned, guys, we will close out the show in style. SEC Pick'em for Week 5. We start in Lexington, Kentucky. The Kentucky Wildcats taking on the Florida Gators. It's a noon kick on ESPN. I think Florida definitely got lucky with this game being at noon instead of that night game atmosphere. I know some folks love to joke and scoff and make fun, but Kroger Field can turn up a little bit on a Saturday night, if you will. A pair of teams that, again, this we've talked before. This feels like a bit of a separation Saturday where it's like, okay, we do these SEC power rankings and we're trying to guess who should be the 4th best team, the 7th best team, the 10th best. Well, now we're about to find out on the field. Because the body of work for Florida is a really nice win over Tennessee and a loss to Utah and 2 cupcake wins. Who really cares, right? So how good is Tennessee? How good is Florida? We have no idea to this point. Kentucky, meanwhile, has just sort of skated through this season, right? Like they haven't done anything flashy or all that impressive. They did take down Vandy last week, but even then there were some tense moments in that game. I look at this ball game, guys. Florida brings in 2 things that travel. Running game and defense, right? With Montrell Johnson, Trevor Etienne, and Austin Armstrong, they're currently fielding right now the number 1 defense in the SEC statistically. On the Kentucky side, Devin Leary, Liam Cohen, the OC, of course, Barian Brown, Dane Key, Ray Davis, that entire group. Can the Kentucky offensive line get the push necessary and hold up against Florida? I think they will. I think this is a lower scoring game. I've got the Cats staying undefeated. Give me Kentucky in this ball game at home. They edge out Florida ever so slightly. I think the Vegas line in this one is Kentucky -3. I'm not even sure they cover that, but Kentucky wins this one late to stay perfect. Give me the Wildcats in this football game. We move to Arlington. Arkansas taking on Texas A&M at Jerry's World, a noon kick on the SEC network. Man, the Hogs need this one, man. They are desperate. Sam Pittman and company talking about going off social media, going 0 dark 30 because of mean tweets and things that were said and stuff like that. I mean, it's starting to get really, really toxic down in Fayetteville. Meanwhile, Texas A&M begins life after Connor Wegman. I think Max Johnson, a very capable backup, one of the best backups in the SEC, but is he able to pick up and seamlessly run this offense? This has been a wacky series, guys. Texas A&M has won every game in Arlington, and it's been some just really crazy ways the games have unfolded. How impactful can Rocket Sanders be in this football game? Is he 100%? Guys, I look at this game. Streaks are meant to be broken. I think Arkansas, this football team, they have great culture with Pittman, KJ Jefferson, the leader under center. I think they rally around each other. And Arkansas finally gets a win over Texas A&M in Arlington. Arkansas gets a much-needed win for their overall morale, team morale, program morale, fan base morale, everything in between. I think the Hogs get the job done at Jerry's World and get a much-needed win over the Texas A&M Aggies. We go to the Plains, guys. Georgia and Auburn, a 3:30 kickoff on CBS. And I think one of the biggest storylines, guys, in this one is just the spread being so low. Georgia only a 14 and a half point favorite. What gives? What does Vegas know about this football game? Because Auburn does not have the horses across the board to go toe-to-toe with Georgia, right? I mean, how are they going to move the football? How are they going to score any points? Is it Peyton Thorne? Is it Robbie Ashford? Is it somebody else? They are an absolute mess and a train wreck when it comes to the offensive side. You know, for Georgia, you could look at and say Carson Beck, his first road test, Mike Bobo as well. Will the running game get going? You know, Auburn features a really talented secondary. Ladd McConkey expected to return. Georgia, I think, getting healthy. Weird things happen in Jordan Hare. I would not be surprised if that is the case yet again and some weird things happen early. But, guys, Georgia will be as fired up and as locked in and as focused as they've been all season. And I think they flex their muscles here, guys. I think there's a good chance that Georgia covers. It's not an official play for me, but I would not be surprised at all if Georgia covered the number here. I'm taking the dogs, guys. I don't see any way Auburn gets this upset. They just simply do not have the firepower on the offensive side. I think it might be a little bit of a sloppy game, low scoring, kind of ugly, but Georgia's going to get out of the Plains with a win, and I think an easy win, as they're wanting to show the SEC in college football, hey, we're still here. We move to Nashville, guys. Missouri taking on Vanderbilt, a 4 o'clock kick on SEC Network. Don't sleep on this ball game. Do not sleep on the Commodores. Vandy has not been good this year. They've been downright terrible, actually. Heck, they're considering a quarterback change after A.J. Swan threw 3 interceptions last week. And Mizzou comes in riding high 4-0. They're ranked. I'm picking Missouri to win this football game, but do not get caught looking ahead, right? Mizzou got that big matchup with LSU next weekend. Do not get caught looking ahead in this game, because this is still the SEC, and Vandy had a knack for last year, taking down Kentucky, taking down Florida, winning some games they probably shouldn't have. Clark Lee, his staff, they got a great culture there. They'll have this football team ready to go. Do not be surprised if this game is closer than you'd expect, than most are expecting. But I think Mizzou, I think they will stay perfect. I think they move to 5-0, and they get a tougher than expected, but a well-earned win over the Vanderbilt Commodores. Guys, we move to Oxford. Ole Miss, LSU, 6 o'clock kick on ESPN. Man, I can't wait for this one. I mean, this one's going to be a lot of fun. One of those 50-50 toss-up games we talk about all the time, guys, that we get so excited about. This one could truly go either way. 2 great quarterbacks in this game, Jaden Daniels, Jackson Dart on the Ole Miss side. We found out this week Michael Trigg, the star tight end, dismissed from the team. For Ole Miss, it's all about getting Quinshon Judkins going, though, guys. That's what it comes down to for me. And what worries me is that Ole Miss, they haven't been able to get a push all season. Just have not been able to impose their will up front. Meanwhile, LSU earning that hard-fought victory last weekend at home against Arkansas. LSU's walking a tightrope right now, guys. If they want to make the college football playoff, they can't lose again. Their playoff hopes and dreams rest on the fact that they have to go undefeated the rest of the way out and win the SEC championship. Are they going to do that? I don't know. But that second loss, I don't think it comes this week. I think it's a really hard-fought back-and-forth game. I think LSU has just got one more punch than Ole Miss has. I think they edge out Ole Miss. I think the Bayou Bengals get the dub over the Rebels Saturday night in Oxford. Of course, guys, I locked it in. I've got Tennessee beating South Carolina. And then finally, Alabama travels to Starkville to take on Mississippi State. A 9 p.m. Eastern kick on ESPN. This is another game, guys. Sneaky good ball game late on Saturday night. If you're Alabama, boy, do not look back past Mississippi State. Because now, hey, Will Rogers found it. Will Rogers has got it going. Does that all of a sudden change the dynamic in this football game? I think for State, they've got to get back to getting Woody Marks, the ground game going, get it established. I think Alabama last week, that second half, finding their confidence. They now, they come in this game. There's no uncertainties at quarterback. Jalen Milroe is the guy. I think Starkville's going to be a really tough environment. The cowbells will be going. But I think Alabama will do enough here. I think that they win at the point of attack on the line of scrimmage. It's all going to be put on Will Rogers, and at some point, he's going to crack. I think Bama, simply put, just out-athletes the Mississippi State Bulldogs, and they get the win in Starkville. Guys, that's going to do it for our SEC Pick'em and for today's show as well. Appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much, guys, for the continued love and support. That being said, looks like no new questions or anything. Let's see. Bollinger did have something to say. Bollinger had something to say. Vols O-line is highly susceptible to error, and if we key in on stopping the run and managing our mismatches, do you still believe they hand Carolina a 40-piece? I mean, do I think South Carolina could hold Tennessee to less than 40? I think it's possible, yeah. But I think this is a high-scoring game, guys. I took over 61 for a reason. This is a high-scoring game. I think the Gamecocks have to score 35 or more to win. I think it's going to take 35 or more to win this football game. So, is it possible? Could the Gamecocks make some adjustments and Joe Milton's no good? And sure. I just don't trust South Carolina's defense to do that. I'll be honest with you. I don't trust South Carolina's defense to get those stops. I don't trust South Carolina's defense to all of a sudden find it against a Josh Heupel attack. So I think the Vols will move the football. I think they'll move the football at a high level. I think South Carolina, they're going to have to go back and forth. And I think on the home field, Tennessee will just have one or two more punches and one or two more big plays in them than the Gamecocks will. So, with that being said, guys, again, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that bell icon so you get notifications when we go live. We drop new video content as well. Also, hit the subscribe button on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. I was going to say Stitcher, but I don't think Stitcher even exists anymore. iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. We drop the podcasts there daily. So be sure to check it out, guys. And do not forget the A1 Air Quality Consultants post-game call-in show will take place Saturday night following all the action, taking all of your comments, your questions, and, of course, your calls, reacting to everything. Guys, that being said, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your Thursday, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.